From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, I am Win Peñano bringing you today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is set to administer the oath of office to newly promoted generals and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines today. The ceremony takes place at the Ceremonial Hall of Malacañang Palace. We'll bring you the President's speech shortly. In the meantime, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has approved a new round of salary increases for employees of government-owned and controlled corporations or GOCCs. Speaking during the 2025 GOCCs Day in Malacañang, President Marcos said he signed the Compensation and Position Classification System 2 or CPCS 2, which grants salary adjustments for GOCC workers.
And in support of the hard-working men and women who make this possible, I have approved the Compensation and Position Classification System 2. That will increase the salaries of GOCC employees. Well-deserved naman.
The President added that GOCC employees would also receive a tiered medical allowance depending on each corporation's financial capacity. For those that had already implemented CPCS-1, the increases will take effect retroactively from January 1, 2025. The move follows record remittances of nearly 117 billion pesos from the 53 GOCCs this year, which the administration said will help fund education, healthcare, infrastructure, and social protection programs. Meanwhile, Albay 3rd District Representative Joel Salceda thanked President Marcos for approving CPCS2, calling it a victory for GOCC workers.
Dateline Malacañang.
In related news, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has challenged government-owned and controlled corporations or GOCCs to modernize services and cut red tape, stressing that efficiency and transparency are as important as fiscal contributions. Speaking at the 2025 GOCC's Day in Malacañang, President Marcos lauded the 116.8 billion pesos in dividends remitted so far this year, but reminded GOCCs that sustaining public trust requires accountability. The President emphasized that this fund should be used for reforms that improve lives and deliver lasting benefits. The Chief Executive said GOCCs must stand not only as revenue generators but also as symbols of integrity, excellence, and service that Filipinos can be proud of.
My challenge to our GOCCs is to invest in modern technology, simplify our processes, and cut down on red tape so that every Filipino enjoys easy, fair, and dignified access to the services that they deserve. For the rest of the bureaucracy, our job is to ensure that the dividends of our GOCCs will redound to better services. We need to spend these funds with utmost transparency and accountability. Public trust is our most valuable currency. Once lost, rebuilding it becomes far more difficult. These funds should promote genuine reforms that uplift the quality of life, reach the vulnerable, and leave a lasting contribution for the generations to come.
You just heard President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
In our news, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has decided not to push through with his planned visit to the United States for the United Nations General Assembly this month. Malacañang clarified the decision was not due to threats to his life, but to allow him to focus on pressing domestic issues. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro cited information from the National Security Council.
Base po sa National Security Council ADG Cornelio Valencia, wala po na direct threat sa buhay ng Pangulo, pero hindi po sila magiging kampante sa pagsiguro at bigyan ng seguridad ang buhay ng Pangulo.
President Marcos was originally set to attend the 80th UNGA in New York, but Castro said he preferred to stay and oversee the newly formed Independent Commission for Infrastructure and the controversies on flood control projects. She added that President Marcos is also prioritizing efforts to address rising prices of basic goods and other urgent concerns of the public.
Marami. Lalo na kabubuo pa lamang ng ICI at ito'y dapat matutukan ng Pangulo para mas mabilis na pag-aksyon sa mga nare-report na maanumalyang flood control projects. Maliban dyan, at syempre dapat tutukan pa rin ano ba ang pangangailangan ng taong bayan, ang mga bilihin para mapababa at marami pang iba. Bilang Presidente, maraming trabaho ang Pangulo.
Castro denied a speculation that President Marcos backed out UNGA due to anti-corruption rallies set for September 21.
Ang pagpoprotesta naman ay natural, normal yan. Sa bawat bansa, kung may mga sentimiento ang mga kababayan natin. Hindi naman po nangangamba ang Pangulo dahil alam po niya na ang pagpoprotesta ng taong bayan ay tungkol sa paglaban sa korupsyon. At binanggit din po niya kahapon na siya mismo ang nagsimula upang mapaimbestigahan itong mga maanumalyang flood control projects. So hindi po nangangamba ang Pangulo sa gagawing protesta dahil alam po niya na ang magpoprotesta dito ay kakampi rin po niya, kakampi sa kanyang adhikain. Dahil sabi nga po niya kahapon, kung hindi siya presidente, malamang ay makakasama rin siya sa pagprotesta laban sa korupsyon.
You just heard Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang says the proposal to give contempt powers to the Independent Commission for Infrastructure or ICI is a welcome move to strengthen its authority. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro clarified, however, that such powers are not necessary since the ICI was created as a fact-finding body to investigate anomalous flood control projects. Still, Castro said the president welcomes the suggestion if lawmakers decide to grant such authority.
Ang sabi po ng Pangulo, ito'y fact-finding commission. So, di po kinakailangan talaga po na magkaroon ng power na mag-punish dun sa mga taong hindi dadalo. Pero, kung iyon po ay ibibigay sa Independent Commission ng mga mambabatas, maganda po siyang suggestion. At yan po ay welcome na welcome po sa Pangulo.
The ICI, chaired by retired Supreme Court Justice Andres Reyes Jr., includes former Public Works Secretary Rogelio Babe Singson and SGV Executive Rosana Fajardo as members, with Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong as a special advisor. Castro also welcomed Senate President Vicente Soto III's plan to ask President Marcos to certify as urgent the measure institutionalizing the ICI. Meanwhile, Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman said about 21 million pesos from the Miscellaneous Personnel Benefits Fund will cover the ICI staffing costs, while its other operating expenses will be sourced from the contingency fund.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang has reminded the Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP and other uniformed personnel to remain apolitical amid alleged destabilization attempts against President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. In a palace briefing, Press Officer Claire Castro addressed reports that some groups are urging the military and police to withdraw support for the president over controversies in flood control projects.
So, ang sabi ng AFP ay huwag silang gamitin sa pamumulitika. Tama naman po. Ito pong pagpoprotesta na po na to ay wag natin ihalo yung mga uniformed personnel dahil ang protestang ito ay manggagaling talaga sa taong bayan at hindi po sila dapat gamitin para magkaroon ng destabilization.
The AFP earlier stressed that soldiers and police must not be used for partisan agendas and affirmed loyalty to the Constitution and the chain of command. Castro also cautioned against attempts to topple the government under the guise of protest.
Muli, ang Pangulo ay nirerespeto ang mga tinig ng taong bayan. Kung anong hinaing, yan po ay nadidinig at nararamdaman ng Pangulo. Huwag lamang pong haluan ng ibang intensyon para mismong gibain ang gobyerno. Yan po ay labag sa batas.
Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
We cut our regular programming to give way for the special coverage as President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. leads the oath-taking ceremony of newly promoted general and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in Malacañang. Let's listen to the speech of the President.
Mula sa Presidential Communications Office at Radyo Pilipinas, ito ang Presidential Live Event. Presidential Live Event.
Good morning. First of all, allow me to greet our National Defense Secretary, Secretary Gilbert Chodoro, the other members of Cabinet here present, the Chief of Staff of the AFP, General Romeo Browner, and the major service commanders. Of course, the newly promoted officers and armed forces of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and equally importantly, their families. Fellow workers in government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am always filled with pride whenever I stand before the brave men and women of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Today, you just took your oath as newly promoted generals and flag officers to bear greater responsibility to the Filipino people and to the state. This year, the AFP has yet again demonstrated its reliability in humanitarian assistance and disaster response operations, from typhoons and volcanic eruptions to earthquakes here at home, even in Myanmar. You have shown our people and the world that the Filipino soldier is always ready to save lives, deliver relief, and rebuild communities. You have also further strengthened our international defense posture through joint and multinational exercises such as Balikatan 40, Exercise Alon with Australia, Talisman Sabre, and engagements with partners across the Indo-Pacific. Moreover, you have continued to sustain readiness through training, simulations, and command exercises. These have improved tactical responsiveness, ensuring that the AFP remains prepared to defend our country. These accomplishments underscore the professionalism, the dedication, and the readiness of the armed forces. They also strengthen the confidence of our people in your ability to protect our sovereignty and to uphold the values that we hold as a nation. You have achieved much this year, so this promotion is well deserved. Now that you have taken your oaths, remember, set an example for the young men and women who will look to you for your leadership. These new stars you carry will demand your utmost discipline, honor, and service. And as your Commander-in-Chief, I call on you to continue to strengthen our presence in the air, on land, and at sea. We must guard the peace we have gained and deepen our ties with partners who also envision a freer, more stable region. I know the sacrifices you have made in serving this great nation. Rest assured, this administration will do the best we can to provide you with the resources and benefits so that you can focus on your duty. Huwag kalimutan, ang panunumpa ninyo ngayon ay sa Republika at sa bawat Pilipinong nagtitiwala na dahil sa inyo, sila ay mabubuhay ng ligtas at may dangal. Today is not only a milestone, but a renewed pledge that your loyalty remains with the Constitution and the Filipino people. Always act with integrity, uphold the rule of law, defend our democracy. Congratulations to all of you. Maraming salamat at mabuhay ang sandatahang lakas ng Pilipinas, mabuhay ang bagong Pilipinas. Maraming salamat. Magandang umaga.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this point,
You just heard the speech of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. during the oath-taking ceremony of newly promoted general and flag officers of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in Malacañang.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, has assured the public that its red alert status is not politically motivated. AFP spokesperson Colonel Francel Margaret Padilla said the measure imposed last September 12 is part of a standard security protocol ahead of nationwide rallies against alleged corruption in government flood control projects. Two major demonstrations are set for September 21 at Rizal Park in Manila and the People Power Monument in Quezon City. Padilla stressed that the AFP will only play a supporting role to the Philippine National Police, which is primarily responsible for maintaining peace and order. The government is currently investigating anomalies in flood control projects following President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.'s directive during his State of the Nation address in July.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine National Police, or PNP, will be monitoring the three-day transport strike in Metro Manila and other parts of the country. PNP Acting Chief Lieutenant General Jose Melencio Nartates Jr. said police commanders have been directed to coordinate with local governments for the deployment of mobility assets to assist stranded commuters. Transport Group Manibela staged a nationwide strike on September 17 and will end on 19, while Piston will hold a separate strike on September 18. Nartates assured that the police will maintain peace and order, particularly amid reports of harassment against drivers who choose not to join the strike. He stressed the need to balance the rights of striking groups, non-participating drivers, and commuters. Meanwhile, the PNP is also preparing safety measures for the September 21 protests. Nartates said sufficient personnel will be deployed and coordination with organizers and local governments is underway to ensure a peaceful and orderly demonstration. He added that the PNP respects the people's right to protest and urged participants to work with authorities in maintaining safety.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Archdiocese of Manila is calling on the faithful to express their disappointment over corruption in flood control projects through peaceful actions. Archbishop Jose Cardinal Advincula said protest rallies are a moral conviction and a way of holding leaders accountable beyond elections. He stressed that the Church must guide the faithful with impartiality while promoting the common good. Religious leaders and civil society groups are also urging the public to join the Trillion Peso March against corruption on September 21 at the People Power Monument in Quezon City. Organizers expect at least 15,000 participants. Father Albert Delvo of the Manila Archdiocesan and Parochial Schools Association said the rally is nonpartisan, aimed solely at fighting corruption. He also thanked President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. for efforts to address irregularities in flood control projects.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, has lifted the suspension on procurement activities for locally funded civil works projects. In a memorandum, DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon said the move prevents delays in critical infrastructure but stressed strict compliance with new safeguards. Among the measures are the live streaming of bidding, geotagging of projects at all stages, and a stricter validation of road and bridge data. All project details must also be encoded in the DPWH's monitoring systems for transparency. This is warned that non-compliance could lead to the deferment or cancellation of biddings and administrative or criminal sanctions for officials involved. The suspension was imposed earlier this month following controversies over flood control projects.
Dateline Malacañang.
Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon again expressed dismay over substandard flood control projects, this time in Bawang, La Union. During his inspection in Barangay Acau, Dizon said some projects were poorly built and used inferior materials. He also found one project reported as completed last March is still under construction. The projects include flood mitigation structures along the Bawang River Basin. Dizon was joined by Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong as part of President Marcos's directive to check flood control projects nationwide. Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police or PNP vowed full support in securing DPWH inspections. Acting PNP Chief Lieutenant General Jose Melencio Nartates Jr. said police units nationwide are ready to assist, ensuring the visits remain safe and free from threats. He stressed the PNP is committed to the President's call for transparent and accountable infrastructure development.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Transportation or DOTR has filed charges of use of falsified documents against two former Department of Public Works and Highways or DPWH engineers for using fake driver's licenses to enter a casino. Acting DOTR Secretary Giovanni Lopez lodged the cases Tuesday at the Parañaque Prosecutor's Office against former Bulacan District Engineer Henry Alcantara and former Assistant District Engineer Bryce Hernandez, members of the so-called Bulacan Group of Contractors Boys. Lopez said the move follows President Marcos Jr.'s directive to hold users of fake licenses accountable. The Land Transportation Office has permanently canceled the two men's driver's licenses. If convicted, they face up to 6 years in prison and fines of up to 1 million pesos. Similar cases are being prepared against other alleged members of the group. Lopez warned the public using a fake license is a crime and offenders will be pursued.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation or PAGCO reported a 40 to 50% drop in income after major e-wallets removed gambling payment links. PAGCO Assistant Vice President Jessa Maris Fernandez told a Senate hearing that platforms like GCash and Maya delinked gambling transactions, causing an immediate hit to revenues. To curb illegal online gambling, PAGCO announced it will roll out an AI-powered tool to detect unlicensed websites in real time in coordination with the Cybercrime Investigation and Coordinating Center, National Telecommunications Commission, and Department of Information and Communications Technology. Fernandez said PAGCOR favors strict regulation over a total ban on online gambling. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas said it will submit a position paper to Congress which is deliberating several bills ranging from prohibition to tighter regulation. Senators also raised concerns over the large amounts Filipinos can still wager through e-wallets despite the delinking order.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Education or DepEd is seeking a 928.5 billion peso budget for 2026, equivalent to 4% of the country's GDP. Education Secretary Sani Angara told senators the proposal aims to make every peso count for teachers and learners. The budget includes 56.4 billion pesos for school infrastructure, 50.6 billion pesos for feeding programs, 16 billion pesos for laptops and internet connectivity, and 6 billion pesos for teacher development. Angara said the allocations reflect the administration's commitment to address immediate needs while building long-term reforms. DepEd also listed a 33.6 billion peso wish list for additional programs depending on available funds.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Social Welfare and Development or DSWD reaffirmed its commitment to support repatriated overseas Philippine workers or OFWs from their arrival at the airport to their reintegration in local communities. DSWD Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao said social workers coordinate with other agencies to assess the immediate needs of returning OFWs who may receive financial, medical, and transportation assistance. The department also offers livelihood support through its Sustainable Livelihood Program as well as psychosocial services under its Wise Support Initiative for those who experience trauma abroad. Dumlao stressed the programs aim not just to provide relief but to help repatriated OFWs rebuild their lives and become productive members of their communities.
Dateline Malacañang.
More than 57,000 jeepney and tricycle drivers nationwide will benefit from the government's 20 peso per kilo rice program as it expands to the transport sector. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. said transport workers, whom he called one of society's backbones, must be prioritized for support. Each registered TODA member may buy up to 10 kilos of rice per month at the subsidized rate. The expansion rolled out simultaneously in Navotas, Angeles, Cebu, and Tagum City in coordination with the Department of Transportation, Department of the Interior and Local Government, and local governments. The program, ordered by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., already covers fishermen, farmers, minimum wage earners, and vulnerable groups such as senior citizens, solo parents, and the 4-piece beneficiaries.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Agriculture, or DA, announced that bus and taxi drivers as well as teachers may soon benefit from the government's 20 peso per kilo rice program. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. said the expansion follows the ongoing rollout of the Benting Bigas Meron Na program to tricycle and jeepney drivers. He said bus and taxi drivers may be included within 2 weeks, while teachers and non-teaching personnel of the Department of Education are being considered for October 15. The DA assured the program's sustainability, noting it will also help the National Food Authority clear warehouses and prepare for palay procurement this harvest season. The agency targets to release 1,000 tons of rice daily in October, 2,000 tons in November, and 3,000 tons in December.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippines is expecting higher rice harvests in the third quarter of 2025. According to the Philippine Statistics Authority, palay production may rise by 18.4% to 3.94 million metric tons, with harvest areas expanding to over 943,000 hectares. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. said the country remains on track for a record harvest, though the full-year forecast has been trimmed to 20.35 million metric tons due to heavy rains and flooding. By year-end, rice supply is projected at 3.86 to 3.96 million metric tons, enough for up to 101 days of national consumption.
Dateline Malacañang.
Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. reaffirmed the government's strict and data-driven system for fish import allocations. Chu Laurel said the system is fair and without political favors, stressing its integrity is being questioned. He earlier revealed that ACO Bicol Representative Saldico pressured the Department of Agriculture, or DA, to approve permits for 3,000 containers of fish this year, a request he rejected. He also denied giving preferential treatment to companies linked to Navotas Representative Toby Chanco, noting they have long been top importers and complied with the agency's allocation formula. Chu Laurel said many traders, including known diverters, also failed to get permits, while 35 companies have already been blacklisted. He assured the public that the DA is intensifying its fight against agricultural smuggling in coordination with the Department of Justice, National Bureau of Investigation, National Security Council, and Philippine National Police, with hopes of seeing smugglers handcuffed before year-end.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that concludes today's edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, I am Win Peñano. Good day.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.